Hello, today is Wednesday, August 13th. Welcome to episode 488 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast to get you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller, and I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellows Amy Mitchell and Matt Hayden. With the global economy facing both hopeful indicators and ongoing headwinds, President Trump issued another 90-day pause in his proposed tariffs on China. The new deadline is now set for November 10th, but this is just the latest in a recurring cycle. These repeated extensions have fostered ongoing uncertainty, making it harder for businesses to plan investments or commit to long-term strategies. Policymakers and industry leaders find themselves in a wait-and-see mode, responding to each new deadline rather than locking in lasting solutions. A dynamic that many say amplifies political and economic volatility. The current executive order keeps U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports at 30% and China's duties on U.S. goods at 10%. This staved off a snap back to triple-digit tariffs, and that would have been 145% from the U.S., 125% on goods from Beijing. Which would have essentially been a functional embargo between the two of the world's largest economies. So, Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent says the groundwork for a deal is being laid with upcoming meetings planned. Beijing and possibly a Trump-Xi summit for this fall, but despite the progress, there are many fractures that run deep. The tariff dispute is over, in some ways, a proxy battle over deeper national security concerns. And I would love to actually start there with Amy. Can you tell me your thoughts about this? Like, what is the strategy and how does it tie into national security? I mean, obviously, the three of us are not PhD economists, but we do care about national security and we do like to follow these tariff discussions and the implications for our overall national security and relationship with China and our allies. So, Amy, what are your thoughts? What is going on? What is the strategy from the Trump administration?
The strategy is let's make a deal. That is the entire strategy that the president and his team want to do. So beyond like this game show that we're all, either voluntarily or involuntarily now a part of, we are in an age of national security relativism. And what I mean by that is it used to be just 6 short months ago that if there was a national security imperative, every other policy kind of fell in line behind that, meaning economic security and policy, right? Our tariff policy, etc. And just look at TikTok, for example. Now we're inverting this where it's all about making an economic deal and using coercive tactics to get that economic deal versus putting national security first. So are we now saying that national security doesn't apply to TikTok? Are we now saying that it doesn't apply to chips? As long as the US government gets that cut, and I hate to be so pessimistic about this, but it used to be, again, that our national security was the foremost policy in the US government and that everything else stemmed from that. We have inverted that, sadly, and now we are in this kind of make a deal scenario every day.
Matt, what are your thoughts? Are we is this helping our national security posture? Where do these talks get us, and why does Trump keep giving some running room for these additional discussions?
The t-shirts that we all tried to wear for the last decade is that economic security equals national security. And it was always a challenge to get marketplaces to recognize national security as a primary driver for purchasing, for larger economic drivers across the board, including trade with China. There was real struggles when you would go to the economic portfolios and say, I need you to buy this device that is more expensive for national security reasons. And people would just not do it. You would have cheaper goods that were more insecure or that leveraged uh, risk into our national security conversations. So I can't say that having national security first as a policy was successful in the consumer markets to the extent we were happy with. And so right now, driving the economic market to then leverage national security outcomes is one that I'm welcome to. I think that we have really laid on those tracks of TikTok is bad and that we can't leverage this way without making an economic or commercial conversation about it. And so now that we are leveraging the economic viability through trade conversations and broader uh, additional tools at the disposal of the White House, we're actually looking to see great progress on things that we have had highlighted and bulleted for a very long time. So, while it doesn't come naturally to us in the national security community, while we are used to identifying the risk first and foremost and trying to get left of that risk being introduced into markets, using the marketplace itself, with the US being the consumer as well as the manufacturer that it is, to position us to be safer and to position us to leverage and mitigate against some of these risks is a strategy that works if all this plays out. So there is a game show mentality to it, as Amy put it, because we don't know the outcomes yet. But the extent that we are seeing the White House posture itself for quote unquote the best deal does include national security outcomes in that deal. And so I'm not as pessimistic that whatever this deal isn't going to reflect national security outcomes. I think that the deal's inclusive of that, but we're also seeing a large posture around what the US markets as well as our partner in each individual trade deal is going to leverage.
Mhm. So, I mean, obviously there are carrots and sticks, and we talk about leverage, and I mean, how much leverage do we really have with the United States right now? I mean, obviously, we're concerned about fentanyl. We're concerned about competition with China with regard to AI. We know that they are, have some pretty grand plans for their own national security and dominance globally, both on a security posture, but also economic posture. But you know, are we really in a position to hold them over a barrel? I mean, aren't we so dependent on China? How would you characterize our leverage?
I mean, I will tell you that
Matt, do you want to go on that one?
we're the largest marketplace in the world. Whereas there are people who are manufacturing items they're similar and in some cases equivalent at cheaper rates. That doesn't mean that the U.S. consumer isn't still king. There is a global marketplace that outpaces us and outsizes us as a whole, but you still want your marketplace of any good you manufacture to be sold in the United States. So there is a point of leverage that is still true. There is an extreme to that to where people will walk away, but I don't think we've hit that extreme yet, as you've seen with the negotiations not going, and as you say, to that almost embargo level. So yes, we still have the lever of our marketplace. We still have the lever of our relationships, inclusive of other diplomatic efforts. But there is an extreme that will cause people to walk away. We just haven't hit it yet.
Hmm.
I would just add, Martha, that going back to Matt's original argument, that we haven't had success in using national security as a tool within America to stop, users from using TikTok or buying certain products off of Amazon. The flip side of his argument is, again, going to relativism, that we are basically playing China's game now instead of playing on a higher level with our values. So again, we're going to this make a deal relativism worldview and thinking that that's okay in some way. And I think it's incumbent on us instead to really look to level the playing field by bringing China up to our level rather than us sinking down to theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Matt.
I always
Do you
push
have
back on
any
that.
response to that, Matt?
I do. The pushback I have is that the the openness in which the United States and the transparency in which we operate is unique and not at the same level as what we would consider our, as it was stated in the past, our pacing competitor, our national adversary. And I will tell you that there is a similarity when doing, like, as we talk about in cyber, red versus blue. The techniques that get used by cyber operators are very, very similar, but the intent matters. And so there is a different of intention here, where we are not trying to minimize the ability for China to exist, as they would us. And so there is a difference in the end outcome, as opposed to some of the, it's not the ends justify the means, it's that there's common trade practices that should be leveraged. It just so happens it aligns with some of the ways that others have been exploiting national security in the past.
Well, I think on that note, I think we're reaching our time limit. But I would just like to add, I think it is important. It'll be really important for the market, and for our American industry to at least have some predictability here. And let's hope that in November we get that predictability. Even if the predictability ends up being really high tariffs, at least then it can be baked into the planning that goes into, um, you know, all the planning that the business leaders need to be engaged in. But that being said, I mean, I will say that this is, ultimately this is tough. Like, this is ultimately a tax on consumers, and the American people. And so I think the question in my mind is, are the American citizens fully aware of the national security implications related to China, to an extent that they will be supportive of paying higher prices in order to secure our national security. And I think I'm not convinced that the public writ large has reached that level of appreciation of the urgency. And I think the Trump administration, and other policy leaders need to, bring the general public around to that level of appreciation of the threat. So on that note, if I can have the last word on that, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Kelly Crowley, Keelan Wolf, Claude Jennings, and NSI staff for their help producing today's episode. And join us on Friday, August 15th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast to get you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. Fault Lines is now on YouTube, so check out our channel for a video of today's episode. And if you like what you've heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.